Nobody at Lone Star Tactical Range knew much about the old man with the artificial leg. They knew his name was Samuel Mercer because that was what he wrote on the sign-in sheet every morning. They knew he drove an aging silver pickup with a dent in the passenger door. And they knew he always carried the same faded black case containing an old SIG Sauer P226. Beyond that, Samuel was a mystery. He arrived at 7:15, almost exactly 6 mornings a week. He wore work boots, faded jeans, and a brown canvas jacket that looked like it had survived 20 Texas winters. He spoke only when necessary, paid for his lane in cash, and always chose the farthest booth from the entrance. Then he practiced the same things over and over. He would raise the pistol slowly, settle his stance, fire 2 controlled shots, lower the weapon, and begin again. Sometimes he practiced drawing from the holster without firing. Sometimes he changed magazines. Sometimes he simply stood there, shifting his weight from his natural leg to the carbon fiber prosthetic beneath his right pant leg, searching for a balance point only he seemed to understand. To the younger shooters, it looked painfully slow. A few felt sorry for him. Others found him amusing. The loudest of them were 4 private security contractors who trained at the range every Thursday. They wore matching shirts, expensive belts, and enough tactical equipment to supply a small police department. They filmed their drills for social media and spent more time checking the footage than checking their targets. One morning, Samuel stumbled while stepping away from the firing line. He caught himself against the divider before he fell. One of the contractors laughed. "Easy there, cowboy," he said. "The floor isn't going anywhere." Another man looked at Samuel's worn P226 and shook his head. That thing belong in a museum? Samuel heard them. Everyone nearby heard them. But he did not turn around. He straightened himself, adjusted his footing, and continued practicing. The first man smirked. "Guess he didn't hear me." The range officer standing nearby had watched Samuel for several weeks. His name was Ray Collins, a retired sheriff's deputy with 30 years of experience around firearms and an instinct for people who knew more than they said. "He heard you," Ray said. The contractor laughed again. "Then I guess he's got no sense of humor." Ray looked towards Samuel's booth. "No," he said quietly. "I think he just has discipline." At the center of Lone Star Tactical Range hung a 12-foot banner that could be seen from almost anywhere in the building. Iron Line Challenge. $20,000. Break 28 seconds and the money is yours. The challenge had been created by the range's owner, Logan Price, a wealthy firearms enthusiast who had transformed the facility into one of the most popular shooting destinations in North Texas. The course was difficult by design. 14 targets, multiple firing positions, 2 moving targets, 3 penalty targets that could not be hit, a mandatory magazine change, several barricades, and a final series that had to be completed from an awkward position near the ground. The shooter had to finish in under 28 seconds. Every miss added 3 seconds. Every penalty hit added 10. Any unsafe movement meant immediate disqualification. More than 300 people had attempted it. Competitive shooters, former soldiers, police officers, social media personalities, one former professional athlete who had arrived with a camera crew and left without posting the video. The best verified time was 29.4 seconds, set by a sponsored competition shooter from Arizona. Logan had originally expected someone to win within the first month, but after half a year, the prize money was still untouched. The challenge became his best marketing tool. Every failed attempt produced another video, another crowd, another week of online arguments about whether the course was actually beatable. Samuel had walked beneath the banner dozens of times without giving it more than a passing glance. Then one Friday morning, he stopped. He stood in front of the display board and studied the course diagram. Ray noticed him from behind the counter. Samuel followed each section with his eyes, tracing the route from the starting box to the final barricade. He watched 3 recorded attempts on the overhead screen. Then he looked at the list of rules. He remained there for nearly 10 minutes. Finally, he approached the desk. "I'd like to enter the challenge," he said. The young employee behind the register thought he had misheard him. "The iron line?" "Yes." The employee looked down at Samuel's artificial leg, then quickly looked away. "You know it requires movement, right?" "I read the rules. There's also no refund on the entry fee." "I understand." The employee hesitated before calling Logan. By the time Logan arrived, word had already spread through the building. The old man with the prosthetic leg wanted to run the iron line. People left their lanes to watch. Phones appeared. Even the 4 security contractors gathered near the observation area, smiling as though someone had scheduled entertainment just for them. Logan entered wearing dark glasses, a fitted range shirt, and a holster that looked brand new. He was in his mid-40s, confident, polished, and always aware of where the cameras were. He walked up to Samuel and looked him over. "You're Mr. Mercer?" "That's right." "You've shot the course before?" "No." "You've practiced anything similar?" Samuel glanced toward the course. "A long time ago." Logan folded his arms. "Mr. Mercer, I respect the ambition, but this is not a standard lane drill. You'll be moving through tight positions. You'll have to kneel, stand, change direction, and maintain control the entire time." "I understand." "I'm not trying to embarrass you." One of the contractors snorted behind him. Logan continued. "We have a fundamentals course for senior shooters. Ray can set you up with an instructor." "I didn't ask for an instructor." The answer was not rude. It was calm. That somehow made it land harder. Samuel placed the entry fee on the counter. "I asked to attempt the course." Logan looked toward the growing crowd. He could see the phones already recording. A failed run would generate attention, and attention was good for business. He slid the waiver across the counter. "All right," he said. "Your choice." Samuel signed his name with a steady hand. Ray picked up the form and read it. Samuel Mercer. No middle initial. No listed organization. No emergency contact. Ray looked up. "Before we begin, I need to inspect your equipment." Samuel placed the old SIG Sauer P226 on the padded counter, with the muzzle facing safely away. The finish was worn along the edges. There were scratches near the frame and small marks on the grip. It was not neglected. In fact, it appeared meticulously maintained. Ray checked it carefully. When he handed it back, Samuel performed his own inspection. That was when Ray noticed something. Samuel did not move like a hobbyist. Every motion followed a precise order. Nothing rushed. Nothing repeated. Nothing wasted. Ray had seen thousands of shooters handle pistols. Some were fast. Some were experienced. A few were exceptional. But Samuel's movements had something else in them. History. The kind of familiarity that did not come from weekend practice. The kind that lived beneath conscious thought. Ray looked at Logan. The owner was still smiling for the cameras. Ray was no longer smiling. They led Samuel into the course. The artificial leg made a faint clicking sound each time he stepped onto the concrete. People whispered as he walked past them. At the starting position, Samuel removed his canvas jacket and folded it over a chair. He rolled his shoulders once. Then he bent slightly and pressed a hand against the upper edge of his prosthetic leg, making a small adjustment. For the first time, the crowd seemed to notice that he was in pain. Not dramatic pain. Not the kind that announces itself. The kind a person learns to live beside. Logan stood near the timer. "You can withdraw now," he said. "No one will hold it against you." Samuel secured the P226 in his holster. "I'm not worried about what anyone will hold against me." The crowd went quiet. Ray stepped forward and gave the final safety instructions. Samuel listened without interruption. Then Ray asked, "Shooter ready?" Samuel looked downrange. His face changed. Only slightly. The tiredness seemed to leave his eyes. His shoulders settled. His breathing became slow and even. "Ready." The buzzer sounded. Samuel moved. Not quickly. Not at first. His first step was short and controlled, almost cautious. One of the contractors smiled as though his prediction had already been confirmed. Then Samuel drew the P226. The smile disappeared. 2 targets were struck almost immediately. Samuel was already shifting toward the next position before the sound finished echoing through the range. His movement was not explosive. It was efficient. Every step ended exactly where it needed to end. Every angle placed his body in the shortest possible line to the next target. He did not fight the artificial leg. He had designed his entire method around it. At the first barricade, Samuel leaned just far enough to see the target and no farther. 2 shots, then 2 more. The first moving target crossed the lane. Samuel waited half a heartbeat. 2 impacts appeared near its center. The crowd stopped filming him like a joke. Now they were filming evidence. Samuel changed magazines while moving toward the second position. The action was so smooth that several people did not realize it had happened until the empty magazine struck the ground. Ray stared at the timer display. Logan glanced at him. Neither man spoke. Samuel reached the low barricade and dropped down. A murmur moved through the spectators as his artificial leg folded beneath him. For a fraction of a second, it looked as though he might lose balance. Instead, he rotated his weight through his left side, stabilized, and fired. 2 penalty targets partially blocked the correct one. Samuel's shots passed cleanly between them. No hesitation. No contact. He rose by pushing through his left heel and using the barricade only long enough to regain alignment. Then he moved toward the final section. This was where nearly every previous competitor lost time. The shooter had to engage 3 distant targets from an offset opening while avoiding a penalty silhouette positioned between them. Samuel reached the opening. The P226 rose. 6 shots followed in a controlled rhythm. Not wild speed. Not panic. Just 6 deliberate decisions arriving almost too quickly to separate. Then he stepped to the last mark and engaged the final target near the floor. 2 shots. Silence. Samuel lowered the pistol and waited. Ray looked at the timer. 23.8 seconds. For several moments, nobody reacted. The number seemed too far outside expectation to be understood. Then Logan stepped toward the display. "That can't be right." He pressed a button and checked it again. 23.8. "No," he said. "The sensor must have started late." Ray looked at the system. "It started on the buzzer. Check the video." "We will. Check every target." "We will." Logan turned toward the course officers. "Nobody touches anything." Samuel stood at the finish position, breathing slightly harder now. His face had lost some color. He holstered the pistol and remained still. One of the security contractors lowered his phone. "That wasn't normal," he whispered. Ray and 2 officers walked the course. They inspected each target. 14 correct targets had been hit. No penalty targets had been touched. Every required shot was present. On 2 of the closer targets, pairs of rounds had entered so closely that the holes overlapped. The distant targets were not perfect, but every hit was solidly inside the scoring area. No misses. No procedural errors. No safety violations. Ray returned to the starting area holding the score sheet. "23.8, he announced. "Clean run." The room erupted. Some people cheered. Others shouted questions. Several pushed closer to get a better look at Samuel. Logan did not move. He stared at the score sheet as if the paper had insulted him. "I want the footage reviewed frame by frame." Ray nodded. "You can review it all day. The time will still be 23.8. Logan turned toward Samuel. "Who are you?" Samuel reached for his jacket. "My name is on the waiver." "That's not what I mean." Samuel slipped one arm into the jacket, then paused as a sharp discomfort crossed his face. "I came here to shoot," he said. "That's all." A man near the back of the crowd suddenly stepped forward. He was in his 50s, broad-shouldered, with close-cropped gray hair. He had been standing near the entrance, watching in silence. "Sir," he said. Samuel looked at him. The man's eyes dropped to the black pistol case sitting beside the chair. On the inside edge of the lid, almost hidden beneath the foam, was a small metal plate. S. Mercer. Adaptive Combat Marksmanship Program. The man went pale. "Colonel Mercer?" The crowd quieted again. Samuel's expression tightened. "It's just Mercer now." The man stood straighter. "My name is Daniel Ruiz. I attended your instructor course at Fort Bragg in 2011. Samuel studied him. Recognition slowly appeared. "Ruiz," he said, "you injured your left shoulder during the second week." Daniel gave a disbelieving laugh. "You remember that?" "You compensated by leaning too far right." Daniel looked at the people around him. "This man didn't just teach shooting," he said. "He rebuilt people." Samuel looked away. Daniel continued. "After he lost his leg, he helped design one of the military's early adaptive marksmanship programs. He trained instructors to work with soldiers who had lost limbs, mobility, or strength after combat injuries." A woman near the observation window pulled out her phone and began searching Samuel's name. Daniel stepped closer. Some of those soldiers believed their lives were over. He taught them how to stand again, how to adapt, how to trust their bodies again. The woman found an old article. She read aloud from the screen. Lieutenant Colonel Samuel Mercer returned to training duty after suffering severe injuries during an overseas deployment. Following multiple surgeries and rehabilitation, Mercer developed modified firearms instruction for wounded service members and law enforcement officers. She scrolled farther. "There's a picture." She held up the phone. The photograph showed a younger Samuel wearing a military uniform and standing beside a row of wounded soldiers. One had no arm, another sat in a wheelchair, a third wore a prosthetic leg. Samuel was smiling in the picture. It was the kind of smile nobody at the range had ever seen. More people began searching. More photographs appeared. Samuel assisting a double amputee at an indoor range. Samuel demonstrating a supported shooting position. Samuel standing beside a group of instructors holding certificates. Then another man spoke from the crowd. "I know that program." He stepped forward slowly. "My brother went through it after he lost his hand." Samuel looked at him. "My brother said an instructor named Mercer was the first person who stopped treating him like he was broken." The room became completely still. The first security contractor, the one who had warned Samuel about the floor, looked down. The confidence had gone out of him. "I made fun of you," he said. Samuel did not respond. The man swallowed. "I saw the leg. I saw the old gun. I thought you were trying to pretend you could still do something you couldn't." Samuel met his eyes. "You saw what was in front of you. That doesn't excuse it." "No," Samuel said. "It doesn't." The man's face reddened. "Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you say anything?" Samuel considered the question. Would my past have made the joke less cruel? Nobody answered. Samuel looked around the room. You shouldn't need someone's resume before deciding to treat them with dignity. His voice was quiet, but it reached every corner of the range. I've met decorated men who were cowards when kindness cost them something. I've met people with no rank, no medals, and no impressive story who carried others through the worst days of their lives. He glanced at his artificial leg. You don't know what someone had before they lost it. You don't know what it took for them to walk into the room. And you don't know how hard they may be working just to look ordinary. Logan finally stepped forward. His earlier confidence had disappeared. Mr. Mercer, I owe you an apology. Samuel said nothing. I judged you before you ever reached the starting line. I was more interested in getting a video than making sure you were treated with respect. That part you should fix, Samuel said. I will. Logan removed an envelope from the range office and placed it on the counter. $20,000. You earned it. Samuel looked at the envelope. Then he shook his head. I don't need it. It's the prize. I know. You broke the record by more than 5 seconds. I didn't come for the money. Logan frowned. Then why did you do it? For the first time, Samuel did not answer immediately. He looked through the glass toward the course. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed. It was softer. Some mornings my leg hurts before I get out of bed. Some mornings I put it on anyway, then sit there wondering what exactly I'm getting up for. Daniel lowered his eyes. Samuel continued. I spent years helping other people believe they were still useful. I was good at it. He looked down at his hand. I haven't been as good at believing it about myself. The range was silent. I wanted to know if there was still something in me, Samuel said. Something besides old stories. Logan pushed the envelope closer. There clearly is. Samuel looked at the money again. There's an adaptive sports program at the VA Medical Center. They help injured veterans try shooting, archery, and other activities after rehabilitation. Last I heard, they were short on equipment. Logan understood. You want the prize donated? All of it. Done. Samuel looked directly at him. Not in my name. Logan hesitated. Why not? Because they don't need my name, they need the money. Daniel smiled faintly. That sounds like the man I remember. Ray leaned against the counter, still holding the score sheet. You ever think about teaching again? Samuel gave a tired laugh. I'm 69 years old. That wasn't my question. Several people in the crowd nodded. Ray pointed toward the course. You didn't just break the range record. You showed every instructor in this building a better way to move through it. Logan stepped in. We could build a weekly adaptive class, not a charity event, a real training program. Samuel studied him. For veterans? For anyone who needs it. Samuel looked toward the security contractors. One of them said, I'd volunteer. Samuel raised an eyebrow. The man seemed embarrassed. I have a lot to learn. Yes, Samuel said, you do. A few people laughed, but not cruelly. The tension in the room finally loosened. Daniel extended his hand. It would matter, sir. Samuel shook it. Then another person approached. And another. Some wanted to thank him. Some wanted to apologize. One young shooter asked whether Samuel could help his father, who had stopped visiting the range after a stroke weakened one side of his body. Samuel listened carefully. Bring him next Saturday, he said, early, before it gets crowded. The young man nodded, his eyes shining. For the first time since anyone at Lone Star Tactical Range had met him, Samuel smiled. It was not a broad smile. It carried too much history for that. But it was real. Hours later, after the crowd had thinned and the videos had already begun spreading online, Samuel sat alone on a bench near the parking lot. The Texas sun was dropping behind the low buildings, turning the sky orange over the flat horizon. He rolled up his pant leg and released the top of his prosthetic. The pressure eased. He closed his eyes for a moment and waited for the pain to settle. Beside him rested the old black case. Inside was the SIG Sauer P226 he had carried through years of training, injury, rehabilitation, and doubt. It had never been magical. It had never made him stronger. It had simply remained familiar while everything else changed. After losing his leg, Samuel had spent months learning how to stand without falling, then months learning how to turn, how to lower himself, how to rise, how to move, without trusting a limb he could no longer feel. The first time he returned to a range, he had missed almost everything. His balance failed. His timing disappeared. His confidence went with it. So he started over. One movement at a time. One shot at a time. Eventually, he learned enough to teach others. Then retirement came. The phone calls became less frequent. The uniforms disappeared into a closet. The students moved on. And Samuel began to wonder whether the most useful part of his life was already behind him. That morning, he had entered the Iron Line Challenge to answer a question he was afraid to ask out loud. He had his answer now. Not because of the time on the screen. Not because people finally knew his history, and not because a room full of strangers had applauded him. He had his answer because a young man was bringing his father to the range next Saturday. Someone needed help. Samuel still knew how to give it. Logan came outside carrying a printed donation receipt. $20,000, he said. The transfer is scheduled for Monday. Samuel looked at the paper and nodded. Thank you. Logan sat beside him. I'm taking down the old challenge videos. You don't have to do that. I used people's failures as advertising. They agreed to be filmed. That doesn't mean I handled it well. Samuel looked toward the building. Then handle the next one better. Logan nodded. I'm also changing the sign. To what? Logan smiled. 23.8 seconds. Course record. Samuel sighed. I told you I didn't care about the record. The sign isn't for you. Samuel looked at him. It's for the next person everyone assumes can't do something. Samuel considered that. Leave my military history off it. I will. No medals, no rank. Just your name and the time. Samuel nodded. That's enough. He secured the prosthetic again, lowered his pant leg, and stood. The pain was still there. So was the stiffness. Nothing about the day had made him younger. Nothing had restored what he lost. But as he walked toward his truck, his steps felt different. Not easier. More certain. Inside the range, Ray was already sketching ideas for the adaptive class. Daniel had offered to help. The security contractors were stacking chairs and packing equipment without being asked. And on the counter beside the register sat Samuel's score sheet. 23.8 seconds. Clean run. No penalties. A number that would become famous around the range. But Samuel knew the real victory had not happened on the timer. It happened after the shooting stopped. He placed the old SIG Sauer P226 on the passenger seat, still locked safely inside its battered case. Then he started the truck. Before pulling away, he looked back at Lone Star Tactical Range. For weeks, he had entered that building as an old man people barely noticed unless they wanted something to laugh at. Next Saturday, he would return as an instructor, not because they had discovered who he used to be, because he had remembered who he still was. Samuel Mercer turned onto the highway and drove west beneath the fading Texas sky, carrying no trophy, no check, and no need to explain himself. Behind him, the lights of the range came on one by one. Ahead of him was another morning, and this time he had a reason to get up for it.